Today we're on Raising Questions yet again. That's the name of the show after all, but I'm not going to raise too many questions today. I am going to answer questions from our nationwide audience, and in fact, and I'll keep this secret as to exactly who it is, somebody from Berlin, Germany apparently has a question. So I'm not going to be raising questions so much as trying to answer them today, but probably not very well. The questions are really great. Bob of Boston has asked, did President Trump exceed his power as president in getting rid of the Attorney General? People are very worried about this kind of thing. They see Trump walking into the White House and taking on too much power. He's firing people left and right and so forth. Bob of Boston, no, he did not. He did not exceed his power. He might be doing things a little bit on the scary side. I think that's what he's trying to do, trying to shake things up, in other words, by seizing what power he has. But there are certain powers in the Constitution that the Supreme Court has interpreted to mean that the president has certain inherent powers just because he's the president. There's nothing in the Constitution that says, hey, if you're Attorney General, the president could fire you anytime he wants to. That's not in there. But the Supreme Court will go along and say, no, President Trump acted like a president. So Bob, I hope that helps you. I hope you can sleep tonight. President Trump did not exceed his authority at all in doing that. A president can get rid of any attorney general at any time. Now, Teresa of Avalon, I don't know what state that is, could be Virginia, says she's in a dark night of the soul. She wants to know, is there a war on women? Is there a war on women? Look at all those protesters in the first days of the Trump administration and so forth and so on. Is there a war on women? I say no. There is no war per se on women. What there is, I think, is a war on, perhaps you could label it femininity, or on the feminine, or on the female, or something like that. It's been going on for a really long time, especially, I think, in the history of this particular country. There's a war against, I think, estrogen, you might say. And the nice part about this is that everybody's made up of testosterone and estrogen. One is male and one is female. Actually, estrogen doesn't wear dresses or things like that, and the males are not every bit of testosterone is a professional boxer. It's not that clear and simple. There is testosterone, which has been labeled male, estrogen, which has been labeled female, and everybody's a mixture. And it just seems to me that for a long time, there's been a war on the estrogen part of everybody. Some people have a majority of estrogen, some people have a majority of testosterone, but everybody is a mixture. And it seems like a really deep question. Something really basic is happening in the country right at the moment. That a war on women is being more or less presupposed. I think it's a war on femininity, or you could put it this way, maybe the war on femininity and the war on the stereotypically female part of everybody, including the war on the stereotypically female part of men, maybe that's coming to an end. I think that it's really interesting that we have this kind of hyper-macho president at the moment against the war on women people who are arrayed almost totally against him. Quite interesting that those two forces came to Washington at the same time. Maybe something's going on to address the problem. And maybe we'll get to the point in our society where we can achieve more balance within the individual so that not only testosterone in men is admired, but a man's estrogen as well, and vice versa for women. That would be great. So Teresa of Avalon, I hope that helps you get out of your dark night of the soul, as you put it. I just wanted to say one more thing. If you look at American history, it's been a macho place for a long time. People came over here, they had two problems. They had to get rid of the people who were already here, they did. They had to get rid of the trees, they haven't succeeded at that. They haven't put those on reservations, but they did a very thorough job of destroying a place in order to inhabit it. Years and years later, there was some maybe accurate statement made in Vietnam, an officer, I believe, was talking about an American operation in Vietnam where a little village was destroyed, and the officer said, well, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. Now that might help answer your question too. There's been too much testosterone floating around, no question about it. Wanda of Washington has a question, namely, is President Trump really president? Apparently, Wanda says she's not been watching TV, but she's heard this horrible rumor that President Trump doesn't exist. There is no President Trump. She just finds that impossible to believe. All I can say is I don't know whether he's going to be a president or not. I think he's basically the engineer-in-chief. He wants massive road construction, bridge construction, and so forth. He wants to shrink our attention back to America to get that kind of thing done. He may be a visionary. He may be a jerk. Who knows? He may be a jerky visionary or a visionary jerk. We really don't know. I don't think he's going to act too much like previous presidents. And Wanda, I think actually there's a good chance the man will disappear from the White House before his time is up. I think, I'll make this crazy prediction, in about a year and a half, his job will be done, and it will be President Pence whom we'll be asking questions about. I don't know. You might want to save this program and check it out in a year and a half. Barbara of Berlin has another question. Is Trump undoing U.S. policy on Europe? I recently heard a radio program that on National Public Radio, as a matter of fact, that trumpeted, if I can use that word, trumpeted the question, isn't Trump undoing 70 years of American policy in Europe? And the whole idea is that we all ought to be scared of that because 70 years of peace is a good thing. And if President Trump is making noises about NATO and calling NATO obsolete, that must be a bad thing. Here I will actually defend what Trump did or said. He's alleged to have said NATO is obsolete. Well, everything's obsolete. Everything is obsolete. Anytime you improve something, you've admitted it's obsolete, at least in some way. NATO is obsolete in some ways, and it does have to be improved. And I think what Trump is doing, Barbara, is announcing to the rest of the world that he's sick and tired of one thing that I'm sick and tired of too, namely the American taxpayer spending half of their taxes on the defense establishment. And a huge part of the defense expenditures in America goes towards Europe. Isn't it time to have Europeans actually spend more money, an equal share of the NATO expenses on their own defense? Well, we don't know. That could shake up Europe a lot. If we pulled out a lot of money into our troops, Germany, France, etc., would have to stare themselves in the face and in the mirror and say, wait a minute, is this such a good thing after all that the Americans are gone? Should we be criticizing the president? Should we be maybe coming up with some better ideas? No, what's my better idea? My better idea is that Trump may be right, saying NATO's obsolete, we have to improve it, and get the Europeans to spend more money on their own defense. Why? So that we can have more of that money for ourselves and improve our roads. Drive down an American road. First thing you have to do, avoid the potholes. In Germany, that's unnecessary, and there's a reason for it. We spend too much money on the defense establishment here rather than on our lives here at home. All right, what about Norbert of New York, who asks a really interesting question. How are we going to keep our country American when we have so many immigrants? All these immigrants are watering down our society. Well, this is a pretty obvious answer, Norbert. Maybe you were asking this tongue-in-cheek, because if he's from New York, he knows New York has how many nationalities? 100? Who knows? Italians, Germans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It used to be, in fact, up until recently at least, that there were so many Germans in New York, so many children of Germans who came here at least, that the Germans in New York, if they'd been moved back to Germany, would be the 5th biggest German city in Germany. Lots and lots of them. Did that undo the character of New York? Did that make it less American? Obviously not. Again, another fast answer. What about Lou Gehrig, German name, G-E-H-R-I-G, first baseman for the New York Yankees, son of German immigrants. Babe Ruth, R-U-T-H, pronounced root, German also. Lots of nationalities just added and added and added into whatever it is that makes this country what it is. So I wouldn't be afraid of more immigrants, no matter where they're from. However, Chelsea of Chicago asks this. She says, I am a psychic, and even I don't know what's going on. So kind of back to Norbert's question about immigrants and so forth and so on. We have a really, really big challenge ahead of us. Chelsea of Chicago, you're very interesting. If you're a psychic and you don't know what's going on, and Katie of Kansas is on the same wavelength, she's asking, are we doomed? Is our society going to be fragmented and disappear because we are no longer the America that we knew and loved? I would say that that's the challenge. That I have no answer to that, but that is the American challenge this time around. We've met other challenges like World War II. The American challenge this time is, what are we going to do at home? How are we going to find a national pastime like we did before to absorb German baseball players, Italian baseball players like DiMaggio, and so forth and so on? How are we going to find some sort of national set of symbols like the national pastime to absorb all the new immigrant groups that we're going to be getting? And we should be getting them. Fly across the country. Take a look at the ground below. Nobody lives there. Between New York and California, nobody lives there. No insults to the great people of Chicago. We have a lot of room. And hopefully, this is my last part of my answer, hopefully we'll be able to come up with a new national pastime. If it isn't baseball, it's got to be something else in order to preserve the American way and also preserve that part of the American way that says other people from other countries are more than welcome to come here and help form the American way.